Hi, this is John Grant in Washington, D.C. I want to thank you for taking the time to check this video out. Today I want to discuss why I'm forming the REI Policy Institute. And to get into the why, I think we have to first look back as to the kind of work I've been doing for more than a decade for the industry to understand where we've been and where we're going. In terms of where we've been, most of the work that I've been retained to do have been what I would call, a one-off, essentially. The Mortgage Debt Forgiveness Relief Act, Forgiveness Debt Relief Act is an example. We needed one thing done, and we got it done on more than one occasion. You look at we had issues with mortgage fraud accusations coming from some of the government-sponsored enterprises. We had issues of investors being blackballed by those enterprises. Those issues were quelled. We had larger issues for clients that I represented about how short sales were being valued, the valuation methodology. And we were able to work with FHFA. That resulting work ended up with the creation of the standard short sale program. So there's certainly a track record of success. What there isn't, though, is a track record of permanent representation in Washington and permanent effective representation by people who are actually registered federal lobbyists. I want to look back a little bit historically. Whether we go as far back as the Rockefellers and the Carnegies, or we go to more modern times with the Bill Gates of the world, government affairs and industry have always been linked. Some of you may recall that Mr. Gates almost lost Microsoft to the Clinton Justice Department during an antitrust claim. And one of the lessons learned from that is that Mr. Gates thought he could run his company in Redmond, Washington, and not have to worry about the other Washington. That turned out to be a near fatal mistake. I say this not as a scare tactic, but as a simple reality. While some of you may feel it would be a great world if we didn't have to worry about Washington and regulation and legislation, the fact is it would be irresponsible not to. So there is no question that there needs to be this permanent presence, and that's what the REI Policy Institute is going to do. I'm certainly aware there may be some critics who say that we may not need this. They say, it could cause more problems for the industry. Look, I'm not going to really address those because I'm not going to swing at a pitch in the dirt. The simple fact is there's no historical evidence to suggest that. In fact, every lesson learned from every other industry demonstrates that you just don't go to Washington when you have a problem, but you need to form relationships with folks, and some positive things can happen, like we saw with the Mortgage Forgiveness Debt Relief Act. So I won't be addressing a lot of those concerns. What I would say, though, if you look at the negative things that have happened to individuals or to the industry, most of those can be connected to a lack of permanent representation. Whether those things are failure to understand Federal Trade Commission rules, or whether it was what I believe to be some abusive practices by government-sponsored enterprises in terms of blackballing certain investors, or investors not getting proper valuations. You look more recently you see how the larger financial institutions were able to penetrate the residential market. Part of that was a function of the housing market and the need to sell a lot of distressed properties. But make no mistake, a large part of that was also due to a very strong lobbying influence within those organizations as well. Another reason for this, there are two basic reasons for it. It's not only as a form of protection, but also to explore opportunities. And again, I think there's enough precedent historically, both going way back and more recently, to demonstrate the necessity for this. Now, how we plan to assemble this is, essentially to look for a leadership council. I plan to identify, and I'm working with my partner in this, Randy Patrick, 20 members in the industry to be part of this leadership council. Probably locking in at that number. But these folks, along with subscribers to my newsletter, will have a voice in relaying to me what their policy concerns are. Some of the big ticket items coming up, reforming the housing finance system is still very much on the table. I've heard stories of some government-funded nonprofits harassing landlords. And we certainly still have concerns about valuation methodology and whether or not banks are following the methodology that they should be. That we expanded that methodology a bit to take into consideration what's really happening in a community. So I think it's important to understand and really critical for me to convey to you that while I'm starting this group, this isn't my group. This group belongs to you. It belongs to the investor community. Ultimately, what is decided for me to advocate on is decided by that leadership council and our subscribers. I don't make any independent decisions on issues that we should lobby on. So I want to convey very clearly that the REI Policy Institute is being created for this industry, not for me. I'm not going to throw parties on a boat, do anything like that, and raise money for myself. It certainly does need to be funded, and that funding will come from council members and through these subscriptions. So that is why the people who participate have a voice, and the people who don't do not, because it is important to understand that without the funding, none of the good things that I talked about earlier in this video happen. Simply an impossibility. So I hope that helps kind of get folks to understand, the importance of the Leadership Council, the importance of the REI Policy Institute, why I'm forming it, the fact that it belongs to the industry, and some ideas as to what we plan to do in 2016. So I hope you'll consider supporting it. Randy Patrick is contacting potential members of the Leadership Council, or you can just simply subscribe to the newsletter. That's a great way to get started. And if you're interested in the Leadership Council, you can certainly contact Randy or myself about that. Thank you for your time. Take care.